cosmopolitan city on the Mediterranean in Lebanon by the name of El Gamor. She was born in 1900, and at the age of 11, she came to America. She was supposed to, she had an aunt here and also a sister who was married. And her father was very homesick for his only sister and his daughter. And he thought, since my mother was offered a trip to America, that she would go for a couple of years and talk them into coming back home with her. Well, she was 11 years old, and her aunt was going to in the process of sending her a ticket to come to America, and she had been booked for the Titanic. But when they went down to Beirut, she went with her father to Beirut, why the money had not arrived from America, so she missed the Titanic and took another ship into America in 1912, in the spring of 1912. Now, her father was a stonemason, and her mother was a homemaker. But her mother was also an educated woman, and we guess her to have been probably born in the 1860s, and that was quite a thing for someone to be trained and educated in a convent school, which her mother was. Well, she arrived in America, and she worked. She was sent to a private school and was too homesick to stay there. So she was brought back to New York to stay with her aunt and her sister until she was old enough. She was trained and taught to sew, and she worked in the garment factory until she was around 21 years old. In the meantime, her sister Selene had moved to Ohio, and she came here to visit her on a Christmas vacation, and she never returned to New York. That's when she met my father. My father was born in Zanesville, Ohio. He made several trips back to the old country with his mother and father because of his mother's health. And finally, his mother and father, with his brother Leonard and a sister Helen and a sister Mary, returned to the old country. They never returned to America. And at the age of 16, my father and his brother, who was 18, came to America, and they were with relatives in various towns in Ohio, like Corning and Bremen and New Lexington and places like that. Well, when my mother came to Ohio to visit her sister, why, she met my father. And I guess it was love at first sight. She got married and never returned to New York until many, many years later. In fact, till 1937. But she raised all of us, and I'm the second child of our family. My brother is the oldest one, and his name is Leonard, and he is 2 years older than I am. He was born in 1923. I was born in 1925. Then we had a brother by the name of Verna, who was born in, I'm going to guess, because I think he was 3 years younger than me. So I would say that he was probably born in 1928. And at the age of 16 months old, he died from lobar pneumonia. And then I had a brother, Cyril, who was born in 1932. I have a sister, Verna, who was born in 1934. I have a brother, Ferris, who was born in 1936. And the baby of the family is Bill, or Samuel, who was born in 1937. Where do I turn it off? Paul, you want those pillows taken from away from you? Hi.
That's fine.
I'm going to pick up from where Gloria left off. She was telling you about Dad. Dad was born in 1996, came to this country in 1912. At the age of 18, he served this country during World War I. Dad had volunteered. He was a runner in France, gassed at a later date, and was returned home.
there's something very, very, very special about my mother and father, and that was the fact that I got to visit Latin. My trip to Demore showed a beautiful little village. I was able to meet my aunt, my mother's sister, and then I went on up to Alfarin, where my father resided. I stayed with his nieces and nephews. I was able to meet two aunts, Aunt Karimi and Aunt Bunder. Yeah, Aunt Bunder. They were the only surviving sisters. In Beirut, I stayed with my dad's youngest brother, Uncle Salem. He didn't live very long after that. He was an attorney in Beirut, and my uncle, I think, died in 1968, just after Dad. Alfarin was a beautiful, or is a beautiful village. I was able to climb the mountain, go into a cave where I was able to find my father's name and my uncle's name. At the time they were about 12 or 14 years old. They had gone into the cave and carved their initials. So I had an opportunity to put my name next to theirs in the cave. It is above Zahli. It's magnificent. It has beautiful spring water that runs down. I was very, very impressed. In fact, the ocean for my mother and the mountain for my father, they're my two favorite places. Other than that, let me start off with my brothers and my sisters. My best memories, or my nice memories, are on Lake Drive in Zanesville, Ohio. I was one of what I called Dad's four twins, Cyril being the eldest, Ferris after me, and then Bill. It seemed like Dad didn't realize that he had four children. I think we were all sort of connected because anything that he dictated applied to all four of us. If we went for a ride, all four of us went for a ride. If we got to go to the movies, all four went to the movies. Only thing is we had a real dud in the crowd of four, and that was Bill. If Dad said that we could go to a movie on Sunday, that meant all of us had to go or none of us go. And he would give us an option, definitely, of being able to go to the movie or take a ride with him, which we never really wanted to take. That got to be old. Bill's answer to that was always, Dad, I think we want to take a ride. So it became a matter of three people trying to bribe him. When that didn't work, we ended up having to threaten him. So that's one of my memories. Another is the fact that for many years, Mom and Dad didn't realize what the hole in the ceiling of our living room was from. Well, Cyril was the adventurous one, and I don't know where he got a gun, but it was really a bullet in the ceiling of the living room. He wasn't aiming at anyone, but it did go off, so it buried itself there. Another memory is the fact that when Mom and Dad used to go visiting in the evenings at friends' homes, Cyril, the leader of, I don't know, I suppose you could call it the pack, constantly had things going on in his mind as to what we should do and not do, and he really was the leader of the four of us. He decided that we needed to save ourselves in case there was a fire in the house. So he put us through fire drills every time Mom and Dad left. So that meant going out of the top window or the second floor window from every room, including one room that had concrete under it. It amounted to him going out the window, me handing him Bill, then handing him Ferris, and I was the last one to drop. So those were drills that I think he relished the fact that Mom and Dad were going to visit so that we could have these drills. Another time that I remember, and I'll always remember it, is that we weren't always what you would call wealthy children. We had to gather our pennies in order to be able to do something, and we would put them together in order to afford whatever it was that we wanted to do. So Mom and Dad again had gone out for the evening, and we had some pennies, so we decided that we were going to gather everything that we had and go looking to see if we could find more. So we found 10 cents. We decided to go up to the Lebakis, the grocery store, and buy a big bottle of pop. So we were able to find the large containers of pop, and we bought it, brought it home, took our glasses, 4 of them, divided them evenly. I mean, we took, other than measure, it was a good sight of measuring, and went to drink it and found out that we had mineral water or club soda or something. You've never in your life saw 4 sadder kids. I mean, that was sad. Um, you know, I guess everybody goes through that, but it's a memory that I'll not forget. We lived on Lake Drive. We lived on the railroad tracks. We ran the railroad tracks. We went through culverts to get down to the Muskingum River. We went on to the hill. We all traveled pretty much together. We jumped the cliffs. We played in water that we found out had to have snakes in it. After 20 years, I find out there were snakes up on Tooby Hill, and I'm afraid of a worm. So, but they're good memories. They're very, very good memories. You could.
My mother never returned to Lebanon, and I didn't explain that very well. But she came in 1912, and when her father sent her over, he told her to stay a couple, 3 years, and then to bring her sister and my Aunt Selene back. I mean, her aunt and her sister back. But World War I broke out in Europe in 1914, and that is probably the biggest reason why she never returned. After that, after the war was over with, she was a teenager, and by that time she was working in the garment district in New York, and she did some very fine work. She did a lot of hand work, and she also was such a good seamstress and very well liked by the people that she sewed for, that she was able to make very good money. And she also was a perfect size 14, and she modeled for the designer. The designer would design these things, and then she'd want to see what they looked like as of whether or not she wanted to pursue the particular pattern. So my mother would, now this was just a side thing, it isn't that she was hired as a model. She was still sewing there, but then she would try on the clothes for the designer, and the designer would take it from there. And she was very successful, and she had very, very beautiful clothes and beautiful jewelry. We've gotten some of the jewelry. My mother, my grandfather put a beautiful gold bracelet on her wrist when he took her into Beirut. I don't know whether it was to go after the ticket or whether it was to board the ship. And she was just 11 years old at that time. And then after that, she acquired another very beautiful bracelet, little different design. And I had those 2 bracelets, and since that time, my sister Verna and I have decided that the jewelry should be given to the young people to enjoy. So I gave Kathy Grandma's, my mother's gold bracelet.
That she got as a teenager.
She didn't get, she got that as a teenager, but not the one that her dad put on her hand.
Well, she wasn't a teenager yet.
She wasn't a teenager then. Verna has a beautiful pin that's this pearl and
sapphire
set in platinum. Set in platinum. It's just delicate and beautiful. I had a diamond lavallée from her, and one day in recent years, she was going away to a wedding, and I insisted that she take it back home with her to wear it, and she's put it somewhere, and we've never been able to find it. And she also had a beautiful diamond ring, not the one that my father gave her, but another one, and that was given to her granddaughter, Mary Martha. She had some beautiful clothes that she brought to Ohio with her, but these were all the results of this wonderful jobs that she had working as a young woman. I don't know where to go from here with her. Okay, would you like to say something?
Let's go to Dad.
Go to Dad.
Dad came to this country, I believe, my understanding is primarily to work, earn money. He and his brother Leonard, And my grandfather had told them that he would like for them to send money to him on a regular basis, that he would buy land for them, that they were to come back at a later date. If they have a family, bring them back, and he would have acquired all this land. So Uncle Leonard and Dad worked for quite a few years, I would say probably around 20 years, because they came in 1912 also. So after about that time, my grandfather had contacted my dad and said to him, I've acquired quite a bit of land, gather your family, get a hold of your brother, have him, gather his family, and I want you to come back to this country. And that would have been in the late 30s. So at the time, my Uncle Leonard was in New Mexico.
Working for the War Department.
Working for the War Department, and my father told his father, I will come back home, but I'm going to wait for my brother and we'll come back together. In the meantime, before they made the trip back to Lebanon, Grandpa died. And so my father, who came at the age of 16 in 1912, he never did return to Lebanon, never saw brothers and sisters that were born after he came, or Uncle Salem, who was 1 year old when he came. That's about the extent. The land is still there. My understanding is that he had purchased a parcel for my father, which was thousands and thousands of acres. In fact, he had acquired enough land that it was about a village and a half that he owned. My cousins in Lebanon now are farming it, grape arbors, apple orchards, everything. Yeah. So the land is being used, but it's being used by my uncle's family.
Also, Grandpa was he was a mayor of the town.
Yeah.
And he was also their wise man. He was a man where anybody didn't know what to do. They had some legal problems. They were having family problems or anything. They'd always go to my grandfather's home and sit and talk with him, and he'd help them find a solution to their problems.
That carried through his son.
My father.
Our father.
Yeah, my father
had that place in Zanesville. If anybody had a problem, they came to Forest. So that was carried on.
My father and uncle were very close to one another, and they worked together. Right after they came to this country, they were up in Ashtabula, and they owned a cigar store. World War I broke out. My father went to war, and my uncle stayed with the business. And after the war was over with, he left and he went to relatives that lived in New Lexington by the name of Siemens. And he lived with this lovely family, Siemens, for a while. And somewhere in there is when he met my mother. And whether it was in Corning or Bremen or where it was, I'm not too certain. But I do know that he had a pool room in Bremen. His avocation was business, but his vocation was carpentry. He was probably one of the finest cabinet makers around. But when things were tough, he would have a business, and then he'd be out of the business and he'd go back to his carpentry work. He worked in ice plants for cousins in New Lexington, but after he and Mom got married, they lived with the Tannery family in New Lexington, which was a large family of children. And after that, they went to Zanesville, and this is where my brother Leonard and I were born. I'm the only one that was ever born in a hospital. I was born in Good Samaritan Hospital, and I went to school there. When I was only, possibly 2.5 years old, we moved to Utica, Ohio, and he had a wonderful, wonderful confectionery store. And Leonard and I had some wonderful times there. We played on the Licking River. We gorged ourselves on velvet ice cream when they used to make it. We knew the days that they made it fresh, and we'd have our buckets, and we'd go in there, and we'd get our ice cream.
Those were relatives.
These were relatives. The Daggers are relatives of my father, and the Richies lived there too. And they were cousins to my dad, and we just had a wonderful, wonderful childhood. And then the Depression was taking its toll. About that time, then Dad and Uncle, our families, moved to Galion, Ohio. They had a beer distributing company that wasn't real successful, and my uncle went into the general tire business, and my dad decided to go back to Zanesville and learn a profession. He was a remarkable man. He was up and down, and I don't know how he could ever recover, but he learned how to repair shoes. And about that time, Washington was going to give their World War I veterans, after all these years, a bonus. And he took the money that he got from his bonus for World War I, and he bought equipment, and he opened up a shoe repair shop, which was very slow. But then again, we were in the depths of depression. And while we were in Galion, that's where, we were in Utica, Cyril was born. Vernon and Cyril were born. When we got to Galion, Verna and Ferris were born. We returned to Zanesville. My uncle went to Cleveland. My mother suggested to Dad that we go back to Zanesville, where we had a large group of friends, since we didn't have relatives. And so we went back to Zanesville, which was a good decision that they made. And that's where my brother Bill was born. And
where Dad started the shoe repair business.
Yeah, well, he took it with him from Galion.
Okay.
He took it from Galion to there, and he was in the shoe repair business. And we were starting to come out of the depression, and I have a godfather by the name of Jake Rushay, and he approached my father. My dad was an American citizen. After all, he was born in this country, and they wanted a liquor license. So he became a partner with Jake in a bar and grill. It was very successful. It was a nice business. And they were together for a number of years, but if you know anything about the bar and grill business, after a while, enough is enough, and you're ready to move on to better things. But in between times, there was my father doing cabinet work, carpentry and cabinet work, beautiful work. And that was when he was his happiest, I believe. And then they also acquired the grocery store.
Got the grocery store when I was 13, and we got the drive-in, the golf range.
The golf range
when I was 16.
On Route 40 West, yeah.
Dad built a drive-in restaurant out there.
Restaurant.
And let's see, we got rid of the grocery store, then he got a beer joint for Leonard.
That was John's Grill or something. John something.
Yeah. And I said we had the drive-in restaurant. I liked the drive-in restaurant. In fact, before I came up to school, Dad offered me a business. He gave me an option. You either can go to school or you can have a business, and I chose to go to school. Dad actually offered every one of his children. I don't know if he offered you, but he offered Cyril, Ferris, Bill, Leonard, and myself either a business or the opportunity to go off to school.
No, he didn't offer it to me because I had already gone to Good Samaritan Hospital, and I had my RN, and so I never, the era wasn't right for me for that sort of thing. But we had a lot of fun growing up. Money was scarce at times, but we still had a good time. I tailed my brother Leonard like you won't believe it. Everywhere he turned, I was his shadow, and he never one time got upset with me. He allowed me to go with him with his friends, and we played baseball in the empty lots where they
just
played
like
ball.
Todd and Matt.
Just like Todd and Matt. I used to go fishing with him. There's a story to tell about the old mill on Lynn Avenue. They had a black hole. The black hole.
Tell me.
I used to get up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning with Leonard whenever the first day of season of fishing. I don't know whether it was a particular day for certain fish or what it was, but anyway, I would tag with him down there. But there was also a old mill that had a black hole, and I mean it was very scary. And right alongside of it, this mill was built on a dam. That's where it's got its...
Right next to the levee.
Right next to the levee. And there was a small hole that you could slip down through and get underneath the dam. And we did that at night, and the surrounding rocks were slippery with moss. And how we ever survived it, I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Leonard took you and Cyril took me.
Some of the crazy things, oh, it's a wonder we're not dead. But that was just a little something.
Okay. Uncle Bill and Uncle Ferris were always following me. Every place that I went, they were my shadow. And anytime I would yell to Mom and say, Mom, please make them stay away, she would say, oh, they only want to go with you, they like you. So I was very well liked, except when they knew that they could get my goat. And they both composed a song together. And the name of the song is In a Minnie, in a Manny, in a Futcha-Diddy. And the song would go, in a Minnie, in a Manny, in a Futcha-Diddy. In a Minnie, in a Manny, in a Futcha-Diddy. In a Minnie, in a Manny, in a Futcha-Diddy. In a Minnie, in a Manny, in a Futcha-Diddy. In a Minnie, in a Manny, in a Futcha-Diddy. Now those two sang that song until I nearly died. And I'll never forget it.
I forgot about it. That is true.
Yeah. They used to compose songs all the time. But that one would get my goat. I mean, you know, I'd had enough,
well,
and they would follow me, and that's it.
They'd
sing it, sing it.
Fine.
So, special.
Zayville was finally having a Mahrazan. That's a big Lebanese party. And I was looking forward to it. It had been a long 3 years in training and a lot of hard work and so forth. And I was really looking forward to it. And I was beginning my vacation. But lo and behold, one of my dear friends who had already graduated and was supposed to work a particular shift, like 311, called in sick, which means she was at the Mahrazan. So I'm supposed to start my vacation that same day, and a sister came to me and said, you cannot go until after 10 o'clock. You're going to have to work till 10 tonight because Dorothy Joseph didn't show. So here I am in tears, and I'm just upset no end. Well, I had my clothes all packed and everything for a 2-week vacation because that's all we got. We worked around the clock, went to school and worked 3 solid years with 2-week vacation. That's all we got. So I had my clothes all ready. My father came and picked me up. And I thought he was going to take me out to the party, but he took me straight home. There's Mom, there's Leonard, there's my dad. I'm looking at these people, and it's 10:30 going on 11 o'clock, and I said, did anybody go to the party, to the dance, and to the big time? Well, some of them had been out there earlier, and they left, and I said, well, I want to go. And Dad looked at his watch, he said, it's kind of late. I said, I still want to go. So he said to my brother, go ahead and take her out. He didn't like that at all, but I did, and I went out.
How late was late?
Must have been around 11 o'clock by the time I got out there. Well, a lot of people were getting ready to go home, and my understanding is that Tony Rayfield had been bugging his family all afternoon. When are we going home? When are we going home? When are we going home? He had gone out in the car and taken a nap, and he had just come back into the dance hall when I arrived. I ran into my dear friend Dorothy Joseph, and of course I scolded her. I said, I thought you were supposed to be sick. She started laughing. I said, I just got off because of you. She introduced me to a couple friends of hers that they're lifelong friends of mine, and we were having a good time joking and laughing, and somebody tapped me on the shoulder and asked me if would I like to dance, and I said, no, thank you. And this person kept persisting, after all, and naturally it was my future husband. So finally I went out on the dance floor. He had come in to say to his mother and sisters, give them an ultimatum. We're going home now. I'm leaving. Are you going with us? And so anyway, I danced with him for the next hour or so. And he had a first cousin that was a very dear friend of mine that lived just about 2 blocks away from Good Samaritan Hospital. So he started coming down and calling and bringing me flowers and candy, and he was a wonderful person. and kind of grew on me, and we were married a year later. That's how I met him. There we go. Why, when we got married, it was October the 15th, 1947. And we had a wonderful honeymoon trip to Washington, D.C., but poor Grandpa. He had been so nervous during the wedding that he just, the humidity in Washington is very, very high, and he broke out with this terrible rash, and the whole time we were gone, he was sick. But as far as the weather and the scenery and everything is just beautiful. Kathy was born in 1948, September 48, and the following year, Mary Martha was born.
Wasn't Kathy the first grandchild for the Rushays and the second for the Rayfields?
Yeah, she was the first grandchild for the Rushays and the second grandchild for the Rayfields. And she was followed a year later by her sister Mary Martha, who was born in October of 1948. And my mother, she just, my mom and dad both just adored the kids. And my mother just said to me, Gloria, at the rate you're going, you're going to have a dozen kids in no time, you know. And I said, well, you know, that's the way it is, Mom. But anyway, they enjoyed going to Zanesville a lot. And Mom and Dad really played and took care of them, and we had a wonderful time. Their father adored them, and when we got married and came back to Columbus, the company that he worked with had gone bankrupt, and he was a sword maker. So he decided to take advantage of the Bill of Rights. I mean the veterans. Oh dear. The education bill, whatever it was. What was that called? Well, anyway, I can't think. What made me say the Bill of Rights, but that's not what it was. But anyway, he decided, instead of going to college, that he was going to go get checked, take a test and everything to see what he would be real good at. And it came up construction work, carpentry, working with wood, and his hands and everything. So this is what he did, and he became a wonderful, wonderful carpenter. And at his death, he was working at Patel. He had a wonderful job there with them, and they did a beautiful write-up. Everybody knew him.
He actually did construction of their testing.
Yes. He also, he not only had, he had high priority. He had been checked by the FBI and the CIA, and unknown to me, whenever he went to West Jefferson, why they were doing atomic work at that time, and he set up special labs for them there at West Jefferson for the atomic research that they were doing. And when he died, they honored him very much with an article in their newspaper and everything, and they knew him because he was in and out. He was allowed in all the buildings. He had clearance to go anywhere in the institute, and had grown over the 16 years that he was there. Had grown to I don't know how many huge buildings, and people, they just knew him and everything. And he was a hard worker. He loved his family, and after about 8 years down on Buttles Avenue, they were doing a renewal program down in the area, and so the city wanted to buy our home, and he decided to build our home. So he and my father did a good job of putting the house up at Norris Drive, and I stayed there until just summer
of
1994.
Where Anthony was born.
And that's where Anthony was born, yeah. The girls were born down on Buttles Avenue, and Anthony was born on Norris Drive. And I lived there with the children after he died, and was in that house for 37 years. And it was just as pretty when I left it as it was when he first put it up. Beautiful yard and everything. He was a very good father and a good husband and a good Christian man. Well, Snow White came to Columbus, and the kids were excited. Kathy and Mary Martha. Anthony wasn't born yet. So we got all dressed up, and back in those days, you're dressed up. If you were going downtown, you better be dressed up. So we were all dressed up, and we went on a day when Tony happened to be home. So he drove us down there, and we were going to take the bus back. We got down to the theater, and Kathy and I got out of the car, and we said, "Come on, Mary Martha." And she said, "No, I'm not going." And we said, "We're going to go see Snow White. We're going to be late. Your dad's going to get caught in traffic here. Come on, let's go." "No, no, no. I'm staying with Daddy." And she did. She decided since her father was home and she was the apple of his eye, that she'd far better rather stay with her father than to go see Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. She never did.
I know it. But didn't she also take dance lessons?
Oh my God. Then we went through this here deal where they took ballet. We went to this here very, very strict ballet dancer by the name of Gwen Peggy. And Kathy'd be out there dancing, and Mary Martha's sitting on a trunk in the corner because she insisted on doing her own dance. And that just didn't go well with the dance instructor. And she said, "If you can't do the right steps, you can sit on the trunk and watch."
She spent her
So
whole
we
life.
spent all this money for lessons while Mary Martha's sitting on a trunk in the corner.
That's when you decide enough's enough. And she's not going to be on the stage dancing. Why take her?
Oh,
Yeah, she was. Oh, it's on. Okay. Kathy was. Kathy must have been going on 2 or about 2 years old, and I was a moviegoer, so I decided that I'd take her to the theater with me. And they were down in Zanesville at the time visiting, so Kathy and I took off and got the bus, went downtown, and picked up a box of popcorn and a nice little drink, and we went to the theater. Oh, I'd say within 20 minutes to half an hour, Kathy was finished eating her popcorn and drinking her drink, and she had to go to the bathroom, so off we went to the bathroom. After she finished going to the bathroom, we got a candy bar, went back to our seats, sat down, had a candy bar, finished the candy bar, and she looked at me and she says, "Aunt Verna home," or whatever. She wanted to go home. So rather than argue with her, we got up, got the bus, went back home. I had to run her up to the house and took off and went back down to the theater. So with Kathy, I would say the experience for her first movie must have lasted all of 45 minutes. I took Mary Martha to the theater, but I think I waited until Mary Martha was a little bit older and decided that I'd take him to the theater here in Columbus. But Mary Martha had other things that were interesting about her. One in particular is that when she was down visiting with us in Zanesville, she always liked to go into the backyard, and Grandma's flowers were growing, or Mom's flowers in this case. Flowers were growing all over the place. She had beautiful, she had peonies, roses, gladolias, you name it, she had it. So one day I'm hearing Mom inside talking to Gloria, telling her she's got to stop it. She's picked all the flowers and I found them in the yard. So she had gone out and snapped every glad off. So Gloria talked to Mary Martha about it and corrected her and told her that she can't pick flowers like that out in the yard. So the next thing I know, I'm hearing Mom yelling out in the yard. Mary Martha, rather than going out and picking the flowers, decided that she would yank them all out of the ground. So there they were, roots and all, laying on the yard. Yeah, on the sidewalk in the yard. So we go from Mary Martha to the fact that little Anthony coming along. I wasn't around to take him to movies or anything like that, but at the time that I remember Anthony the most, you were already born, Todd. And that was the fact that you lived in the same apartment complex as I did. And I used to knock on the window to get your attention and Anthony's attention to bring you inside, because I would hear this wee outside, and when I would look out the window, there were you and your uncle going down the driveway, him running and you in a stroller, I thought for sure you were going to pop out of the stroller so that the only safeguard was to call you both in and give you candy. So those are some of my memories of the kids.
Okay. Well, there were, we used to get ready to go shopping at least once a month. So the two girls and I would we always got dressed up in Columbus to go downtown shopping.
What's dressed up?
Patent leather shoes, their beautiful dresses.
With big
hats,
petticoats?
Great big flounced dresses with the petticoats underneath. What did we call them?
Petticoats.
No, we call them something else. Anyway.
Gloves.
Gloves and their hat. And if it were cool weather, they'd have their spring coats on, but they were always dressed to the nines. And they also had elevator women at Lazarus. And they got to know the girls so well that one time I was down there, the girls were probably teenagers by that time, and I was downtown shopping. And this was a short while before they discontinued and got the automatic elevators. And I couldn't believe it. In fact, I think I was pregnant with Anthony at the time. And she said something to me. She says, oh, she said, where are your two daughters? They'd be grown up now. And I said, you remember my two daughters? She says, oh, yes, I remember your two daughters very well. She said, I see you're expecting. She said, that is just wonderful. But she said, I'd love to see those girls again. And I couldn't believe that she remembered the girls.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything now.
After Gloria and Tony built their new home, which was, I don't know if it was on a swamp or what it was. As far as I'm concerned, they must have built on a swamp because
I think
one day,
a stream
or something, it was wilderness. I was going over to visit them one day, and there was a snake that scooted across the lawn. So that from that time on, I tread very, very carefully from the car to the house because I was always worried about snakes. This went on for about, I would say, 6 or 7 years, at least, minimum 6, 7 years. And Kathy never believed there was such a thing as a snake in that area. And when I used to go up to the house, if I looked on the side of the stoop, I would see the tail going into the hole or the head coming up out because it was right by the front door. Okay. So one day, Kathy was in the backyard, and Gloria and I we were in the dining room, and I saw Kathy at the window at the sliding glass door like this, trying, let me in. And she's yelling. It was locked, so she couldn't get in. I opened up the door, and she came in. And sure enough, she thought she was picking up a garden hose. When she bent down to pick up the garden hose, it was a snake laying there. That was it. No more doubting Kathy. She knew there was a snake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, tell me about Anthony.
Oh, Anthony.
Well, Anthony was just a cute kid. That's all.
Every place he went, he had to have money jingling in it.
Oh, I always gave him money before we left, and I said, every kid needs to have something jingling in his pocket. But whenever we went anywhere, everybody thought he was so cute, and they'd say, can we get you this? No, thank you. Can we get you that? No, thank you. Everything was, no, thank you.
But didn't he insist on buying your Cokes when he would go someplace?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did.
Said, I've got money.
Yeah, I've got money, and then he'd treat us. But I can't think of any funny things. Can you think of any funny things about Anthony? I can't.
No, other than the fact that he, probably the funniest is when I've seen him with Todd. Truly. Yeah. Or the fact
Bobby
that
Kelly.
I was going to say.
My mother could tell you about Anthony. He adored Bobby Kelly. He just felt that kid was everything in the world. So Bob Kelly would come over to play with him. And she said she would hear him crying, Bobby, don't go home. Please, Bobby, don't go home. I'll get you anything you want. Don't go home. You want a cookie? That's what my mother always said.
So in turn, when Jimmy Gallagher came along,
oh yeah,
poor little Jimmy Gallagher got the brunt of
Anthony. And I didn't realize that till I heard that from his mother not too long ago. And she said, well, if Bob Kelly did that to Anthony, then that's what Anthony did to Jimmy Gallagher.
Yeah, your mother had busy fingers. That's about the best way to describe Mimi. Kathy
was a mothering.
I was going to say, Kathy was the little lady, the one that was going to take the responsibility, including one day when I was over at the house or when I was living with you. Gloria had said to me, I'm constantly giving Kathy the responsibility of going to the grocery store. It's Kathy always taking the money and Mary Martha just going with her, and I think I've been unfair. I need to teach Mary Martha how to take responsibility, how to handle money. That would only be fair for me to do it. So this particular day, she needed something from the grocery store, and she called Mary Martha. Mary Martha, come here, honey. Mommy needs this from the grocery store. Here's the money. You go on down to the grocery store and get it for me. And the next thing you know, she takes off. She calls her sister Kathy. She tells Kathy exactly what Mama wants, gives her the money, and she follows her on down to the grocery store. So that's how she took, she really did. She always passed it over to her sister Kathy.
But I'll tell you, in a jam, the kids had some cousins, boy cousins, a couple of them, that would try to get rough with Kathy.
Oh, yeah. That's where she,
Now, there's where Mary Martha would shine. She'd walk right up to them, put her dukes up and says, you better not hurt my sister anymore because I'm going to get you.
Yeah.
And she's protected.
Yeah, she had that about her. She demanded fairness for Kathy.
Yeah.
Because if people weren't fair to her, she would tell them. Your mom never hesitated to tell them what was what.
But if they were really getting Kathy and hitting her and overwhelming her, she'd get after them. She'd get after them. She could beat them up, but she warned them. No more.
Yeah.
Well,
and there was
tell me about Anthony and what you were just telling me about him speaking and.
Oh, okay. No, you as far as talking.
Yeah.
Anthony was not talking.
Anthony wouldn't talk. He would say yes, no, or something. And my mother was so concerned. She said, have you taken him to the doctor? Is there something wrong with this boy? Why isn't this boy talking?
How old was he?
He probably was going close to 3. When I say he wasn't talking, he'd say yes or no and stuff like that, but never had a whole lot to say. Well, naturally, he had the 2 girls and me. We anticipated his every move. If anybody asked him a question, and his father, they would answer it for him, so why should he talk? Then one day out of the clear blue sky, when this kid started talking, he talked in sentences, phrases, and no baby talk. He had a perfect vocabulary. So I'd say
he didn't. He really didn't.
He was just lazy.
He had 4 adults who were doing everything for him.
So he didn't need to talk.
Mary Martha was in charge of his discipline.
Yeah.
Kathy was in charge of spoiling.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Your mother made him walk the line, and Kathy go on behind her spoiling him, and she'd get upset. Well, what are you doing this for, and what are you doing that for? You know, and Kathy'd laugh and do her thing, and Mary Martha always had to do the correcting and everything else. She took good care of him, like a little mother.
When I think of Todd, I have to go back to remembering Todd when he was about, 2 years old. And again, he lived in the same complex, the apartment complex that I lived in. And Mom would bring him over to see me or come to visit periodically. And he and I spent great time just playing with cars. And his favorite cars were the Matchbox. Aren't they called Matchbox? Yeah. Matchbox cars. And we didn't have a road, and we didn't have anywhere in my room that he could run his car, so we decided to use my body as his highway, or our highway. So he would run his car up my leg, across my body, up my arm, around my shoulders, and I would do the same with my car. And the most interesting thing about it is that most generally I wore shorts when we were playing, and the leg of one side would be his garage, and the leg of the other side would be my garage. We went on for years. I'm serious. In fact, Todd, we still have the same Matchbox
Do you?
cars.
Remember how I always used to ask you if I could take them home?
Oh yes, oh yes. He would want to take them home, and I would tell him that he'd have to return them to the same little table, and that they would be there when he'd come back.
Mhm.
Every time he'd come over, he knew exactly where to go, open it up, pull the little cars out, and we would play. And this went on. It seems to me like we did it for hours, at least in his lifetime. But that's all that Todd ever needed to do when he was over. In fact, I would say he was one of the nicest behaved little ones around, because I have a habit of keeping candy bowls around my home today, and I even had them around my apartment. And Todd would come in and never ask to have a piece of candy. He knew he couldn't have candy, he knew he couldn't have sugar, and so I would have bowls just sitting around, and he never asked for it, never cried for it, and never took any of it. Mm-hmm. In fact, on Halloween, this is one memory of Todd, is when on Halloween he came over and was trick-or-treating, and he told me, he said, "Aunt Verna, I can't have candy, but I can have pretzels." So I went and got him pretzels and had a bag of pretzels for him for trick-or-treat.
I remember that too.
Here are the cars that Todd and I used to play. I think it was back in what, Todd, 1974?
Probably.
Would be the time. And since I wouldn't let you take them home before, I'm going to allow you to have them now.
First time I ever took Todd to a movie, I'd heard all about the Star Wars. And my understanding was that there was animation in the Star Wars, and I thought it would be a good movie to take this young man to.
Like
So
Walt
we got
Disney?
ready, yeah, like a Walt Disney or something. So we go to the theater and everything, and I thought, oh my golly, what's going on here? You know, I didn't care for the movie at all. He liked it very much, but I was totally amazed later when people, including him, could call these people by name in this movie. I didn't remember their names. I didn't know the technology. I didn't know it was supposed to be such a wonderful movie. But he said, I said, well, at least we went to see it, and he just loved it. It's one of his favorite all-time movies. He had every piece of thing that you could ever want, including the magic sword. What is that?
Lightsaber.
The light?
Lightsaber, yeah.
Did you know he had a lightsaber? Did I buy it for you?
Oh, wouldn't surprise me.
I know he had everything.
I'm not sure. I think I got
Yeah.
you the lightsaber. And I
Yeah.
never could understand that movie. Maybe I need to see it again.
Well, you probably slept through it.